with Tullahoma's entrepreneurs. I'm Leigh, the longtime part-time mayor of Tullahoma. As you perhaps know, each year I introduce a different community initiative. Things like Go Green Tullahoma, Get Fit Tullahoma, the Sports Council, tourism. This year my emphasis is on entrepreneurism. So why do we have these different initiatives? Number one, try to move Tullahoma forward in certain ways, and it's also an opportunity to get citizens involved in their community. So what's an entrepreneur? Entrepreneurs are the makers, the doers, the hustlers, the risk takers, and the dreamers. They oftentimes bring a vibrancy to the community. They turn ideas into reality, and they create jobs. These are the founders who invest their own blood, sweat, and tears. Oftentimes their ideas start around the kitchen table and grow from there. We have hundreds of successful entrepreneurs in Tullahoma. We need to welcome, encourage, and celebrate our entrepreneurs. It's important that we support our local entrepreneurs. A goal of mine is to make Tullahoma Tennessee's rural entrepreneurial capital and the city of opportunity and innovation. So why are we around the kitchen table? Believe it or not, that's where many businesses are started and where they are nurtured. Some ideas then move to the garage, then maybe a small office or storefront, then the business is off and running. So each week I want to introduce you to a Tullahoma entrepreneur, someone that has put his or her own money at risk and in some cases created jobs. Joining us this week around the kitchen table is Tullahoma entrepreneur Leigh Fogle. She describes herself as a serial entrepreneur. We first met the Fogle family several years ago when she and her family were camping next to Evelyn and myself at Cumberland Mountain State Park, the weekend of the solar eclipse, as I recall. So welcome, Leigh.
Thank you.
So I'm really anxious to hear what a serial entrepreneur means. But first of all, to start out, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I grew up in Indiana, northern Indiana, Warsaw, which is the orthopedic capital of the world. I started my first project in the 5th grade. I was selling Christmas cards door to door. My sister started doing it. It was the back of the comic books, and she could get tennis rackets and basketballs, so I started doing that, and I had a 100% closing rate because I grew up in the country, and it was, you know, the country mile for the block, and if somebody was home, they basically always bought from me. So I did that, and then I had a t-shirt business in high school with my best friend, and we did tie-dye t-shirts and painted t-shirts and sold it to the swim team and cross-country teams and whatnot, and it was a total flop. We didn't use the right dye, and I had to give all of the shirts back to the swim team and their money, but learned from that. I then went to college in Greencastle, Indiana, DePaul University for about 2 years, and then transferred to Indiana University, which is where I met my husband. We moved just after I finished school to Jacksonville, Florida. And on our 1-year anniversary, we got married right when we moved down there. I started Fogle Fine Art, which is my art consulting business. And similar to your story, my boss in college had offered me a job. I'm a good salesperson. It's one of my things, because I think I listen to my customers and I solve their problems more than trying to sell them something. And he wanted me to do art consulting for him in Indianapolis. This was 93, 92, 93. It was right when Indianapolis was starting to take off. But I didn't want to stay in Indiana, and we were moving to Jacksonville. And I decided to start an art consulting business in the guest bedroom that we just moved into our first 2-bedroom apartment. So we started that business with my husband's credit cards, and I started selling, and within 6 months I had 3 national accounts. And so Brian quit his job, and we worked out of that house for a couple of years. And over the course of the next 17 years, grew it to one of the leading art consulting businesses in the country. So I still have that business. It's changed. But that was my first, and my primary income. But I've since then started a few other technology projects. I was a partner of a hardware technology company in Nashville for a few years, and just kind of always looking at what's coming.
So you made some very interesting comments there about listening to your customer and defining your niche. But tell me, what's an art consulting business? I don't understand.
So that's what my dad asked when I told him I was going to start this business.
That's a dad question,
yeah,
I
it
guess.
is. Well, I was an art history major, just to say, with a studio art minor, but I started off in economics. So I am a real right brain, left brain. So what I found, art consulting for me now is I focus on healthcare. I'm the one that does all the art selections for hospitals around the country. There's really only a handful of companies that do that. And that took some time to figure that little niche. I started off more corporate art in Jacksonville. I would call on businesses that were moving to town, and it was framing, pictures, a lot of poster art. Those national accounts that we got were just like secondary mortgage companies. There was a laser eye company that were opening up offices all over. So we would put together packages of you know, 2 medium, 2 small, 2 large pictures, and we'd ship them all over the country. And so that became kind of the revenue model. And I learned really early that it's economy of scale. When you can start buying in volume, then you can get the best prices and then just take good care of your customers. So I started, you know, when I was 22, 23 years old, calling on office furniture dealerships. I found they had salespeople. I couldn't call on all of them, but if I called on a handful of office furniture dealerships, I could sell the art through them. They made a percentage of the markup. Their salespeople took care of it. And that's what we did for the first few years. Yeah. Now, and how we got to Tennessee was when the recession hit in Jacksonville, I had a 10,000 square foot office space then, 15 employees, you know, a lot of overhead. But I was working with the PGA Tour was one of my clients. I did all of their golf clubs across the country. I had several big projects happening, but a lot of the architects for healthcare are based in Nashville. And so my husband had gotten a job on Music Row, writing music, which is something a lot of people don't realize. He's a phenomenally talented songwriter and musician. And he, you know, that's like getting on the pro tour for golf. So he said, I need to be in Nashville a week of the month, and our kids were 4 and 5. And I said, I travel too much. We're not going to make it if you're gone and I'm gone. And I just took the leap of faith and I said, let's just rent a house in Nashville and I'll commute. So for 2 years, that's what I did. And in that 2 years, we were given so many just huge projects in Florida and Texas with these architects. I mean, 13-story projects, big projects, because I was here and could take care of the designers and them, but then my production was in Florida. And so over those couple of years, had to make the very tough decision, which is probably one of the questions you're going to ask, to close a business that was a very solid business, really. But we closed it because the revenue was all coming out of Nashville, and the overhead for our Jacksonville operation was what was bringing us down. So we closed, and I have maintained that business. I now have all contract employees, and I still do projects all over the country, primarily the Southeast. So like today, I've got a big conference call. We're doing a big project in Fort Myers, Florida, that I did a two-story project for them last year, a health facility. They then brought me in, and now we're working on, it's a 1 million square foot project.
Good grief.
So it's a 2-3 year consulting project that I manage. I select all of the artwork, we curate it, we specify it, we put together the bid package, and then we manage that bid. So it's the right brain, left brain.
Yeah.
It's a little niche that no one really knew was out there.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, to you, it's a big business, and I respect that. But you know, I'm not sure very many people understand that there are art consultants that deal with healthcare.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I would have never known that.
And there, it's interesting because now I talk to a lot of the fabricators. We just do a tiny little bit of fabrication. We don't really frame as much now. But a lot of them started about the same time we did, and a lot of them were husband and wife teams, just like my husband and I were. We were partners in it. But that industry has changed tremendously with the print on demand. You know, you can now, it's the IKEA model of I'm going to buy something and get rid of it from a consumer point of view, but it's also printing on, you know, panels or acrylic and things. You don't need to frame pictures like you used to. And I could see that coming about 10 years ago, which was part of why I started to get into the technology side, because as I was doing art in healthcare, I was interested in how can I deliver the arts digitally. So I started another company called Near2, which we worked with the city of Tullahoma on, and we still have that, but I've kind of put that on the back burner for a short while because we are so busy with our healthcare business that's one thing I've learned. You can do it all, but you can't do it at the same time. That's the thing I've learned.
Sure. So let me back up just a minute. You talked about listening to your customer.
Yes.
So when you consult with a healthcare organization, you listen to what they're interested in the way of art, or do you make recommendations? How does that work?
We do both. I think art is really it's a special niche because there's a lot of psychology to it, and it's not just in healthcare. It's also if you're an accountant or a banker or a real estate person. What you have in your office tells the story about who you are, just like the clothes you wear. You know, it's that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And so, as I did corporate work, I would always say, like, if you were an investor or venture capital person, you'd put expensive art in. You want to look like you've got money to burn, right? It's that kind of thing. If you're an accountant, we kind of started making it more, I'm going to be conservative. I'm going, it's just the different kind of mindset. Healthcare is a wonderful niche because there's so much psychology to it, and you have to think about not only the patients, but the families and the staff and the caregivers. And there is a lot of science that's been put into what is appropriate. So that's what I go to healthcare design and different conferences and listen to these, doctorates that are doing multiple year studies on what is the most effective art for pain. It's crazy, but there is a complete and total niche in it. So I listen to them, but to get back to your question, I think one of the reasons for our success with our clients is because we get to know who they are as an organization, and we try and tell their brand, and we also really strive to make sure that the art is community-based. We try and use as much regional and local art as possible, but we also try and make it as much about them and their mission as they can. A great example, a lot of people maybe in Tullahoma don't know, but St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital, that was my first big project in Nashville. I had done a lot of work with Ascension, which is St. Thomas's parent corporation, and really wanted what was then MTMC, Middle Tennessee Medical Center. Finally, through lots of politics, got the introduction to the person, and I have been doing their art ever since. So literally today, I have a photographer in Murfreesboro taking photographs of some historic sites in Murfreesboro for the new phase that they're building out right now.
Wow.
So, yep.
Yeah. So what was your biggest challenge getting started?
Oh, it's always money.
Yeah.
It's always money. And every time I've done it, when we first started, I don't come from a lot of money, really, thanks to my husband had decent credit cards. That's what we bought the original, materials and things with. But I think even along the way, when you want to take the next kind of leap of faith, you've got to go finance it, you've got to borrow, you've got to get a loan.
Bootstrap it as best you can.
And that's the thing I've learned. I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, and a lot of this came from when the recession hit, think about art in Florida. 80% of my clients literally went out of business or bankrupt. They were gone. Huge firms gone. And architects and designers are no more. It's funny, I was at an event in Nashville a few weeks ago and met a guy, a signage company, exact same stories, personal bankruptcy he had to do. Fortunately, we were able to persevere and didn't have to do that, but we had to liquidate everything. And that was really tough.
Right.
But along that line, I learned some things. And one thing that I learned in about 2009, it was talking about, and this is a great lesson for all entrepreneurs or any business owner, for every dollar that you sell, how much do you make? You might have an 8% profit margin if you're lucky. Some people are 4, some people are 10, but a dime for every dollar you sell. But for every dollar you save, how much do you save? You save $1.
Right.
And I heard that and went, oh my gosh, I've been doing this all wrong, because I felt that recession coming early 2008 before we knew what it was. And I kind of went on the offense and started marketing and hiring and doing all the things, took a second mortgage out on the house, the things that you do when you're an entrepreneur. And by the middle of 2009, I completely shifted, and I was like, let's just go in and figure out where we are kind of hemorrhaging, where we're spending money we don't need to. And, found out we had 2 phone lines that we had been paying for almost, 6-7 years that had never even been activated. One was for the security system that we didn't need. It was $60 a month times 2. We just really dove into those things, and we cut 43% off our overhead. Yeah. It was great. In 2008, I won Entrepreneur of the Year for Jacksonville, and it was the year that I closed the business. Yeah. But it was just kind of making the big shift.
Yeah. So you've talked about owning your own business. What are the advantages in your mind of owning your own business?
Freedom. Really. There's a lot of fear in that you don't know where your paycheck's coming from, but, things like being able to go to the solar eclipse, take the kids and say, we're going to go see this, and not have to ask off, and it's my 2 days, my 2 weeks of the year. My kids are involved with sports and different things, and I can leave. We've got a soccer game this afternoon in Lewisburg, and so we'll be leaving, and I get to go to it. Yeah. So, there's a lot of freedom that I really like, and the ability to kind of call the shots. There's negatives. You don't have anybody to blame. Right. It's all on you. But I also really like building a team and putting the people around you that you want to be, and having some control over that, which is fantastic.
Sure. So let's be honest, there are downsides.
Yes.
What's a disadvantage of owning your own business?
Money.
Yeah.
I mean, if times are good, times
Sure.
are good. But I'll tell you, healthcare is a real problem, and it's gotten worse for us because we're self-employed and we are at an income that we're not eligible for some of the the rebates and
Sure,
things that you
sure.
get. It costs a lot, and we have unfortunately we're on a high deductible plan. In the last 5 years, I think we've hit it 4 times. I mean, it's just been one thing after another. So that is a challenge. And really time management. It's hard for me. I know when we started the business, I was early 20s, and I remember when I turned 30, I cried because I felt like all of my 20s were gone because all I did was work. But I loved what I did, but I was never one to go out and do fun things. I worked 7 days a week. When my kids came along, it kind of changed that mindset. So they're now, my daughter's almost 16 and my son's 14, and we moved here, like I said, when they were 4 and 5, and part of it was that I knew I needed to step away from the business so that I could be a better parent, because it's easy to go back to the office, you know. And now my office is in the backyard. It's close, but I really try, and on the weekends I don't work. When I come home at night, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock, but I try and go inside and I turn it off. It's hard to have balance.
Sure.
Because you're always on.
Sure. So how do you prioritize, though? Give us a tip.
Well, a tip I was given a long time ago is make 3 things a day that you want to get done. I mean, just if everybody can manage, we can remember 3 things. And if you start your day off or the night before, say, these are the 3 things I have to do tomorrow. And it could be that, I just need to call one person. I've got to just do one little thing. But if you have that mindset, sometimes one of those things is going to be an 8 or 10 hour job. But it makes you stay focused on, this is what I have to get done today.
So how do you stay energized?
Well, I'm passionate about what I do. I love what I do. I think so it makes it easy. I don't get up and go, oh, I have to go do this today. There's always days that, today all I've been on is a spreadsheet and figuring out formulas and things. And there's a part of me that likes that, but there's a part of me, I'd rather be talking to people and doing some other things. But I don't know, I enjoy what I do, and I think that's my biggest advice to anybody thinking about starting a business is if you do something that you're passionate about, and even if it's not a business, it's a career. If you're passionate about what you are going into, it won't feel like so much of a job. It's fun. And it's not always fun. I'm not going to pretend it is, but I don't know. It's not something that you have to twist my arm to get up and go to work. So
do you set goals? And how important is setting goals?
Yes, I think, and you kind of have to have milestones too. As I've started some of these endeavors and had some businesses and been partners in some businesses, you kind of have to say, okay, if we don't hit this milestone by 6 months, then we need to reevaluate, or 2 years. And I've done this a few different times where I've said, if I'm not making X amount of money by this time, it's not necessarily I have to quit, it's that I have to change direction, because it's hard sometimes when you're so close to things, you just get tunnel vision of this is what I'm supposed to do. And you really have to be, that's why there's a business plan. And it doesn't have to be this, 30-page long, really detailed. It could just be bullets of, these are the things that I need to accomplish and by when. And then you break it down into how can I get to those goals to meet that timeline. Because, at the end of the day, we all have to pay our mortgage, or our kids are going to graduate from high school. And, things are going to happen because time always marches on. And that's the commodity, I don't care how rich you are, no one has more of than anyone else.
So what do you consider to be your biggest business talent?
I'm really good at connecting people, I think. It's funny, I get calls still to this day that, I needed to figure out who to talk to, so I'll call Leigh because she knows everybody. And I don't think that, but I think because I'm out and about, a lot of it is because of my career, and I'm in technology field. I worked with the Entrepreneurial Center in Nashville for a while, so I met all the Launch Tennessee people. I work with healthcare folks. I work with art folks. So I'm not siloed into just one thing, which is a major advantage. But you also have to remember, I've been in multiple areas. We lived in Florida for a long time. I have projects all over the Southeast. I have family in the Carolinas. And so that network makes it kind of easy. And I kind of like it when somebody gives me a challenge of, we're trying to meet so-and-so, then it's like a detective. You start going through, okay, it's that 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon or something. You start figuring out who who might know, and then we figure it out. So that's one of my strengths.
So in your career so far, what's been your biggest high so far?
You know, winning Entrepreneur of the Year for
Yeah, sure.
Jacksonville was a big deal.
I would suggest you didn't win it, you earned it, but go ahead.
Thank you, thank you. I remember going to the event. It was the Women's Network down there, but it was a huge, I mean, I was 23, and I went the first time, didn't know a soul, and there was 500 people in the room, and I said to myself, I'm going to win this one day. And it just was always kind of in my head. And 2007, 2006, the business was changing, and we were settled. We moved into our, our new space, which was a 1950s building, and we've renovated. I always liked to have a project, and I was like, okay, this is the year you're going to go after starting to get some of these awards on your resume. Because, I was far enough removed from college and all those things, and my resume is kind of short, owner of this business for a long time, so I needed to fill it out. And when I won, it was great. You know, it was really nice. And we also won Small Business of the Year by the Cultural Council down there, and that was a fantastic award by your peers. So that was really a nice thing.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Was the Great Recession a low?
Oh yes, that was incredibly difficult. I mean, like I said, art business in Florida, very tough. Working with architects and designers. It was really hard to close our business. We had long time employees. We had people who had been with us 15 years, and so it was kind of like going through a divorce in a way. But you know what? I was really proud of. I negotiated, and I found all of my longtime people jobs. I still do framing. We still have projects down in Jacksonville, and I negotiated. If you hire this person and you pay him this much and give him benefits, I'll give you my business. And my longtime project manager, it took me 2 years. She moved out. She got married and moved to the West Coast. But after about 2 years of not having her, and we keep calling her saying, Leslie, we can work together, she finally called and said, does that offer still stand? So she still helps me on projects, and it's the world is flat with digital now. I just send her floor plans and say, here's what they want, and she'll help pull all the things, and she sends me a bill once a month, and I pay her on PayPal, and life is good. So
let's take a 30,000-foot view for just a second, for a few minutes. What do you think are the most important attributes an entrepreneur should have?
Well, passion about what you're doing. I've heard so many people, and I've seen this so many times, where people just want to have a business, and so they just look for something. We had a lady that, when we first started, we didn't have what's called a dry mount press, and so I negotiated for this lady. I'd pay her a flat fee for her to press all the posters that we had. And she told us the story about how she was retired and just wanted to start a business, and it was a franchise of tire store or a picture framing store. And I was like, whoa, what? It just didn't make any sense to me, And so when times get hard, if you're not passionate about it, and I think customers can see that too. I think that, you've heard that term grit, that just tenacity, determination, it's really important, and you've got to push through, but you've also got to be, honest enough with yourself to look at, this isn't working. And I think I've seen a lot of, sometimes very, very wealthy entrepreneurs throw a lot of money and time at a project that's just not going to work because they're so enamored with their own idea that they can't see or they can't listen to other people saying this isn't going to work. So you've got to listen to feedback and have mentors. I think it's really important to have some mentors and people that you truly can go to and say, okay, I'm thinking about this, what do you think? And if they're truly your mentor, they're going to tell you what you need to hear.
So you talked about passion, you talked about grit, you talked about mentors, all great advice. If you had 100 want-to-be entrepreneurs out here, what advice would you give them?
Well, you don't jump in feet first. There's that whole thing of keep your day job. There is a way of doing it without betting the farm. I know I've got to be committed to something. Brian will tell the story when he came home the first day of me quitting my job to start this art business. He said, what'd you do today? And I said, I bought our framing supplies. And he said, how much did that cost? It was like $2,000. Now, this is in 1994. We did not have $2,000. He went white. And I said, Brian, there's something you need to know about me. If I'm going to do it, I have to be committed. I needed to know that it wasn't easy to walk away from it. But I also knew that I could make up $2,000. It wasn't $20,000. I wasn't going to go bankrupt over it. So I feel like you've got to hook yourself in that you're not just playing, but you've got to be smart about it too.
You need to have an exit strategy.
Yeah, you know, and I'll say that I remember thinking when I stopped thinking about what my job's going to be when this business doesn't work, that's when I know I'm okay.
Yeah.
Because I would lay in bed at night thinking about projects and money and what I needed to do, but I would always go, if this doesn't work, I could always go work for. And I'll tell you, that's really how I started the business. I had an interview with a major bank, and they offered me a job in private banking. And I went into the interview and I said, I never have a problem sleeping, but I couldn't sleep last night because I keep thinking I should start a business. And it almost became like a therapy session. And this HR person said, listen, if it doesn't work, you always have a job here. Go start a business. And if it doesn't work, call me. I'll hire you. And I was like, okay, so now I have my exit strategy.
Yeah.
You know, after 2 years, I didn't want to go work for a bank anymore, that bank, but you know, I guess that was part of it.
Yeah.
So you've just got to be smart. And you can't count on mom and dad to bail you out. Those kinds of things.
Sure. So let's talk about Leigh Fogle outside of the entrepreneur world, but sort of related to entrepreneur. What do you like to do to keep busy? What's your off time?
Well, I like to garden. Is one of the things that I like to plan gardening. I really like to, you know, in the wintertime think about what I'm going to do for things. But this year I've started running again, which has been really good.
Get fit Tullahoma.
Yes. Well, I ran in cross country all through high school and loved it. And so I've been running and ran a 10K Labor Day and am scheduled for a half marathon on September 29th.
Wow.
And I don't know, we'll see. I'm having some heel issues, which is kind of putting me back, but I like doing that because it's something that I can do on my own time, and it kind of goes into, you know, almost like a meditative state.
Sure.
But you also, it's just like business. You have goals and a plan, and I follow this plan, and this is the day I need to do it, and I time myself, and I can watch how I'm going. I also love camping. I love hiking and things. My son and I went to Big Bend for spring break, and we went dry camping in the desert, just the two of us, and it was fantastic, and I'm looking forward to going to some more national parks next summer with them. So,
favorite book?
You know, my favorite all-time book is a book called Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. Have you ever heard of it? Oh, I highly recommend it. It is about Louis Zamperini, who was a runner, and then he was lost at sea in World War II, and then a POW. She wrote Seabiscuit as well, which is a great book. So that's one of my favorite books of all time.
Yeah. One last question real quick. Why did you choose Tullahoma?
You know, you laugh about this, but it was kind of soccer that brought us here. We lived in Franklin when we first moved here. And Franklin, we were in Leapers Fork, which is a beautiful area, but very expensive. And we moved to Manchester. And I was going back and forth to Nashville at the time. And the kids started playing soccer here in Tullahoma and then started doing travel. And we started coming to church here, but it was really the soccer team was what brought us down here. So we came down, and they said we wanted to move here, and so we found a wonderful home here and moved. We've been here 5.5 years now. So.
Well, Leigh, thank you so much for sharing your entrepreneurial story and the story about yourself as well. And I really hope this is encouraging to want to be entrepreneurs that are just thinking about making that next step to become an entrepreneur. So I appreciate you sharing your story with us. And good luck in all your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
We're glad to be here in Tullahoma.
Good. Thank you.